everybody, I'm Tabitha and I've read 5 more books. So if you watched my November wrap-up video, you already know that it's actually not true when I say I've only read 5 more and I'm a little behind. So we're just gonna jump right in and get into these reviews. Make sure you find me on other social media so you can keep track of everything I'm doing and see the grand total of books. And thank you to all the authors who were patient waiting for us to review these. Are you ready? Let's go. The next book I read in the month of October is Ghost River by Chad Ryan. This is an adult age category horror novel. It was published in 2020 by Lost Boys Press, and it is 483 pages. Your synopsis. Locals say Orphan Rock is haunted. Others say it's cursed. Whatever you call it, something evil is stirring under the dirt. This is the story of the folks who live there, dead and alive. So what didn't I like about this one? Well, the first thing I can say that I didn't like is the use of onomatopoeia. So it seems like it gets more prevalent as the book goes on. So it's only sprinkled in the beginning. By the end, it seems like it's kind of a lot. And I had to start ignoring it. I think it's because it kind of takes the horror right out of it and makes me feel like I'm inside of like an old Batman movie or something, which isn't something I associate with horror. So it sort of takes the horror out of the story when you have to start skipping things like that. Second thing I can say I wasn't crazy about is that some of the storylines in this book are a little confusing. Different people are called different things by different people, and they don't really seem to come together soon enough to help me keep them straight. So when you have two characters calling the same character something different, maybe character A calls them by this name and character B calls them by this name, it gets real confusing for you to try to keep it straight, I guess. The last thing I can say, and this isn't really for me, it's just a warning for you, is that there is a content warning on the first page of this book. And when you look at the Amazon description, it's also there. So there's definitely no excuse. You definitely can't miss it. He makes sure to give it to you right up front so you find it. I'm just saying, don't ignore it if you have topics that bother you or that you're sensitive to. Rape, violence, vulgar language, murder, I mean, they're all going to drop into this book. So consider yourself warned and don't skip that content warning if you're someone who needs those warnings. So what did I like about this one? Well, the first thing is that this book makes good use of length. A lot of times when you see a book that's pushing 500 pages, you'll hear reviewers, and I'm no stranger to this, mentioning that entire scenes could have been cut to trim this down 50 or even 100 pages. This book does not have that problem. I couldn't find scenes that were unnecessary. Everything in this book adds to the plot. Everything adds to the bigger picture. It's all important. So this book makes a really good use of its length. Second thing I can say I liked about this one is that made-up religions can be so much fun. I don't know if that's just me who thinks that or whatever, but definitely made-up religions can be fun. Of course, they're not for everyone, but I definitely enjoy them. I enjoy the way authors play around with like the power in these kinds of stories, who has it, how it works, and what would cause those gods to sort of step back into a situation. This story does a great job of giving us the history of this completely made up and completely messed up religion, and I like that it makes sure to give us their set of rules as well. So I really like that. Third thing I can say I liked about this one is Esther. There's a lot of characters in this one, but Esther just stands out to me. She is hard-edged, like bordering on dangerous. She's also a mother though, and she just like wants what's right for her family at the end of the day. She's pretty amazing. And I kind of found myself focusing on her storylines and her parts of the story more than anybody else's. Who do I think should read this one? Look, you have to like dark reading to like this book. Nothing about this book is lighthearted and fun. You are digging into some serious monsters and some serious violence, so just be on the lookout. I think also readers who are going to like this one are readers who like to think. If you're looking for connections and you like keeping track of characters from page 1, you like to have to think and really have to focus on a book to maybe put your real world out of the way, right? And just get immersed in a book. This is totally the book for you. This book sort of gave me Night Vail vibes with its like dark tone. So fans of the Night Vail series should definitely be giving Ghost River a chance. My rating, I gave this one 3 stars. Not everyone is going to love this book, but if you are in that niche of people who like dark books that make them think, you are going to love this one. I mean, like, new favorite territory for those people. So 3 stars for Ghost River by Chad Ryan. This next book had been on my TBR list the longest before this month started. The next book I read in the month of November was Undeadly by Michele Vail. This is a young adult age category fantasy novel. It was published in 2012 by Harlequin Teen, and it is 272 pages. It was also the oldest book on my TBR going into the month of November. Your synopsis. Molly Bartoli wants to blend in and keep her zombie-raising abilities on the down low. Then the god Anubis chooses her, and she accidentally undoes the work of a Reaper Wrath. Within days, she's shipped off to an exclusive boarding school to train with the best Reapers in the world. So what didn't I like about this one? The first thing I can say I didn't like about this one is that it is undeveloped, which is really, really unfortunate. Look, this one had the potential to be like a full world experience that just immerses us in Reapers, like so many of the other Grim Reaper stories that I have loved and raved about right here on this channel. But this one falls flat. It just falls flat. There's too many details of the story that aren't given to us. They're leaving it to the imagination, or worse, maybe they're leaving it for us to fill in with other Reaper stories, and that's just not okay. There are just too many things this author wants us to take for granted that they didn't tell us, and when you're building a world like that, we want that. We're like hungry for those details. It was really sad they weren't there. Second thing I can say I didn't like about the story is the main character. Oh my gosh, I actually thought I was going to like her. Like, for real. I read the description. I started reading it. I thought I was going to like her. She's introduced as like this snarky character right from the first chapter, which is totally my style. I love snarky characters. But she quickly becomes annoying and like unobservant. She's not paying attention to her world at all. She's just not my favorite kind of character by a long shot. I needed her to be focused. I needed her to be like, I don't know, like in it. Focused, wanting things to happen, and she was almost like watching the world go by, like they were dragging her along. I don't know. Be active in your own plot, girl. I don't know. Third thing I can say I didn't like about this one is that there were just no surprises, like at all. Not a one. I had the whole entire thing figured out. I was like waiting for the book to catch up with what I had already figured out, which is, yeah, not good. The last thing I can mention that I didn't like about this one is that it had really, really immature language. It would be more believable as a middle grade novel starring a 12-year-old protagonist, honestly. This protagonist was supposed to be a teenager. It's supposed to be a young adult book, and the language was just immature, and it was a little goofy. So that pulled me right out of it. Honestly, I think a lot of the problems of this book might have been fixed if she was 12 and this was written for middle grade, because then you have a whole different set of expectations going into a middle grade. Maybe that would have helped it. I don't know. So what did I like about this one? Anubis. I mean, I am such a sucker for God characters written into books. I love it. It's part of the reason why I love Percy Jackson so much. I love the way authors choose to write about them. I love the way they change them from our traditional roles. I love the descriptions, whatever. Anubis was no different. He was great. Good choices for his character. If he had been in more of the book, I probably would have liked it more. Second thing I can say I liked about this one is that I do love necromancer stories. I love Grim Reaper stories. I even like a decent zombie story if it's well told. I feel like shoving all 3 of those into the same tale and adding in that god twist to it was really cool. Like, it had great potential. I really cannot say enough about how much I loved the idea of what this book could have been. Third thing I can say I liked is that the whole description of what a soul looks like was like the best part of this book. So if you're into descriptions like that, maybe go find that one little tidbit and read it, because the description of what a soul looked like was awesome in this book. That was cool. Who do I think should read this one? All right, I'm going to say middle grade readers or middle grade fans, right, who are interested in a sort of like urban fantasy story. So the time period is now, but there's fantasy elements in the world. They may like this one more than I did. My rating? I gave this one 2 stars. Underdeveloped for me equals problematic. Main character I don't like for me equals problematic. Put all that in one book. Yeah, we have a problem. So 2 stars for Undeadly by Michele Vail. The next book I read in the month of November was Cynetic Wolf by Matt Ward. This is a young adult age category science fiction novel. It was published in 2020 by Meyermani LLC, which is an independent publishing company, and it is 342 pages. Your synopsis. It's 2096, and the world has splintered into 4 groups: immortals, cyborgs, enhancers, and animotes, half animal hybrids. They're not equal. But Rick doesn't see an alternative, at least not until his sister is murdered and he's thrust into a challenge he never expected. So, what didn't I like about this one? So, the first thing I can say I didn't like is inconsistencies or repeated ideas. Inconsistencies like I can't see him, followed by a description of what the character is doing, or repeating a concept like an attack being by an elite gets repeated twice in one paragraph. So I'm lumping those all in together because they're minor things I think would have been caught by another editing pass. So little inconsistencies or little repetitions in the same paragraph. They're going to pull you out of the story a little. I don't know how big of a deal it is. Second thing I can say I didn't like is other kinds of errors overall. So I'm including common cliche phrases like they could care less when clearly we meant they could not care less. A few spelling errors, some spacing mistakes, stuff like that. So other sort of grammatical errors do appear. The next thing I can say I didn't particularly like about this one is that there are genre and age category inconsistencies. So this one starts with an opening scene of a kid playing baseball and losing his ball, which is relatable and yet different enough because we're introduced to the world of animotes. But it would suggest middle grade. That first scene would suggest middle grade. We're dealing with a child, maybe middle grade science fiction, right? It stays that way for a while, and then at one point in the story, it sort of ticks up to young adult science fiction, which is fine. The language gets more mature, and that's okay. The character's like, okay, they grew up, we're cool with that. But then the whole back half of the book is adult in nature and adult in language, and yet even more mature than the rest of the book. The second half basically reads like an adult action war book. So that those inconsistencies in genre and age category are really they make it tough. They make it tough for me to recommend it to any one age category or person. Yeah. The last thing I'm going to say I didn't like about this one is that the main character is a little too perfect for me. I like imperfect. I like mistake-ridden characters. I like characters that read real because they're flawed. The fact that this guy was such a fast learner and that this person was so accurate with everything they tried on the first time, it really bothered me. It's a personal thing, I think, but for me, like every time he got something right in the first time, I liked him a little less. So do with that what you will. So what did I like about this one? Well, the first thing is that I really liked how the backstory of this world is built into the story without boring us with like a dry history lesson. The author here does a really good job of weaving that backstory into like the introduction of the story without making it dull. We get the sense of the world that the kids are living in. We get the sense that things are different, but like we're not sitting down to a history class. So I thought that was really cool. That was well done. Second thing I can say I liked about this one is that the action scenes for this one are really well done. You get a nice clear picture of what's going on, and when the action's happening, you're immersed in it in a way that makes it easy to picture. That's awesome. Third thing I can say I like about this one is that the fact that lives are lost on both sides of the war makes this one really realistic. You can't go into a big war and expect everybody to come out unscathed. So I really liked that this author was aware that wasn't going to happen and made at least that part of the story realistic. Who do I think should read this one? If you are a reluctant hero fan who's interested in seeing how that trope plays out in a science fiction type format, I think you're going to like this book. I also want to say action fans, specifically those interested in like futuristic worlds with half animal hybrids. Like if that sounds like your kind of thing, actions in that world, I really think you're going to like this one. My rating, I gave this one 3 stars. This was tough to rate because if you come at it as young adult science fiction, which is what they say it is, this one's problematic. But I also think this one will appeal to like adult action fans. If you like your books heavy on the action with a side of science fiction, you're going to like this one. So in the end, I'm calling this a niche book because for the right reader, I think it's going to be amazing. So 3 stars for Cynetic Wolf by Matt Ward. The next book I read in the month of November was Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. This is an adult age category science fiction, although it has thriller tendencies. It was published in 2016 by Crown, and it is 342 pages. Your synopsis. Jason Dezen is walking home to his wife and child when his life shatters. He's knocked unconscious by a masked abductor and wakes in a life that is not his own. Is it this world or the other world that isn't real? So this is going to be a fast review. It wasn't a shield. Nobody's waiting for it. It's not an arc. And it wasn't my favorite book. So I'm just going to do a fast review and remind you that you can check out the full review by finding me on Goodreads. Who do I think should read this one? If you are a science fiction fan who likes to read about the consequences of big technological advances, you're going to like this one. I also think if you like those stories where someone wakes up in an alternate reality and has to decide which way they're going to go, like, what was that movie? Family Man with Nicolas Cage, right? That movie where they have to decide where they're going to go. You're probably going to love this one. Okay, there's like a million movies that would have that premise, and I don't know why my brain just went to that one. Whatever. My rating? I gave this one 3 stars. It felt a little more for the masses, I guess you could say, than like the heavy science fiction I was expecting, which I think is a problem in a book like this, because a book like this should be heavy science fiction. So in my opinion, that ruined it and makes it a little more niche. But you know what? If you like that and you like when your sci-fi is lighthearted, you might love this one more than I did. So 3 stars for Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. This next book was the book on my TBR with the highest reader average on Goodreads. The next book I read in the month of November was Tree of Life by Sarah Joy Green-Hart. This was independently published in 2018. It is an adult age category fantasy novel, and it was 389 pages. This was also the highest rated book on my TBR going into the month of November. Your synopsis. A religious and political war destroyed democracy. Now, 2 centuries later, a quiet rebellion is brewing. An unlikely group will come together and find comfort in a deity they can only hope is listening. So what didn't I like about this one? One small thing is that some of the shifts in point of view or in time are a little jarring. So this one does jump around to a few characters. Essentially, it works for the story and it shows the importance of understanding all the differences in our characters. But there are a few that are jarring. And those are going to force you to slow down and read again in order to figure out who you are now and what is happening in the story. Second thing I could say I didn't like about this one is David. I just didn't like him. So part of the problem here, I think, is that he's supposed to be the representation for evil in this world. But the evil in their world has been accepted by so many people that, like, I don't know, David is a brilliant way of illustrating it. Honestly, even as I'm saying this, I'm like, no, that's a brilliant technique. Like, David was accepted in their world, but he's the evil, and that shows whatever. The bottom line is he's the evil, and we know it, and so I didn't really like him. He's just like a scummy sort of character. Third thing I could say I didn't like about this one is I wanted more from the ending. Just a little bit more. I get that we're writing for adults who are inherently better at drawing inferences than young adults. But I craved just a little more. Spell out just a tiny bit more of that for me because I just wanted it. So what did I like about this one? Well, the first one is the lessons. And oh, this one is great. I love deep messages. I love them. And this one's for adults. So I say this all the time that I like messages in my young adult. I like them in adult too, but I want them to be different. So these ones hit religion, government, separation of religion and government, trusting your sources and where information's coming from. I mean, those are great adult messages and I loved it. I loved that this author buried those messages without hitting us over the head with it, because it is for adults. I love that it just let us think and let us draw those conclusions ourselves. It was great. Second thing I liked about this one is relationships. This is a dystopian fantasy story, right? We're getting thrust into a future that no one wants to think about. And yet, the cornerstone of this story is romance and love. That is so cool, and it's so relatable. Relationships just drive this story. Brothers, lovers, husband, wife, friends. I mean, they are what this story is about at the end of the day, and that is amazing. Third thing I can say I liked about this book is the language. This book is well written, and the language is just Oh my gosh, so pretty. It's gorgeous. Things are explained really well. You know what's happening, and parts of it literally sound like poetry. Loved the language in this book. Who do I think should read this one? Fans of The Handmaid's Tale may like this one for that same adult dystopian vibe it has going on. I mean, it totally reminded me of that book. Fans of big lessons in their fantasy stories are going to love this one. And people who like adult stories that make adults draw inferences and think are just going to love it. My rating? I gave this one 4 stars. This is a great book. This is a book that fans of adult fantasy should be reading. Go get this one. It's wonderful. Adult fantasy fans are going to love it. So 4 stars for Tree of Life by Sarah Joy Green-Hart. Okay, that is it for me and the next 5 books that I read in November. Thank you for watching it. Thank you especially to the authors or publishers who may have been waiting for some of those and got them just a scotch later than they wanted to. Hey, drop a comment to let me know you're still here. Hit subscribe and tap that little bell so you know when I'm back. Keep plotting the path to your own dreams, and I will see you next time. Bye! Regular watchers of this channel will already know this, but I do book reviews every time I've read 5 books. You should know that I don't read just one specific age category or genre. I'm actually a reader of pretty much anything. So I will make sure to tell you what age category, what genre it is, and more importantly, what kind of readers I think will love the book that I'm reviewing. I do use a 5-star rating system to review all my books, so I'd like to take a quick second to tell you about that system. 5-star ratings are reserved for books that I absolutely love that I think transcend genre. In other words, you might love this one even if you don't normally read the genre it's written in. 4-star books, on the other hand, are books that I absolutely love and think are great books, but they're more specific to the genre they are written for. 3-star ratings are for books that I think are good books, but they have a really niche audience. You might not love this one, even if you normally read this genre. 2-star ratings are the ratings I reserve for books that I think are problematic. I do try to explain some of the problems in the what I didn't love section so that you know if it's the kind of thing that would really bother you or not. 1-star rating, on the other hand, are reserved for books that I honestly didn't enjoy and can't recommend. They're just not for me.